Hi,
Hello, Kate. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for your time.
No, absolutely. Any time Ming reaches out to me and connects me with somebody, I just automatically assume they're going to be great. So it's my pleasure.
Thank you. She's pretty cool, isn't she?
She is. She and I have become very good friends over the past several years. I never would have thought on a one trip to Australia I'd leave with one of my closest friends. So life is interesting in how it works.
Oh, that's great. Yes, we've known each other for I think about 7 years. We met at a conference down in the South Coast at a place called Margaret River.
Margaret River. So if I'm looking at Australia on a map, I know Perth. You have Perth, Sydney. I know obviously Melbourne. So where would that fall?
Margaret River is a wine known for a wine region and a surfing region. It's 2.5 hours south of Perth on the coast,
Got it. All right.
and
Now I know where it is.
they have an amazing creative festival most years. It's called Emergence Creative.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I met her there.
I mean that sounds like a Ming event for sure. Yeah,
She
she's
she was speaking and she was quite rude to me because I was complaining about something.
and as you probably learned, she does not mince words. She is very honest, but that's what I'm sure we both appreciate about her.
So she's been very, very helpful in improving our marketing here at Perth Media and also our understanding of tech. Um, the reason I've requested this interview is I really want to know what RedFox is doing for a start, and then but then I'm hoping you might have some insight in terms of AI and how that the landscape is shifting for PR in the States because we tend to be behind the States, and of course you would know that the Perth market is very strange, old-fashioned little kind of village market where personal connections still really matter, and we're trying to understand what's happening in the rest of the world.
Yeah, when you say PR, are you referring to generalized public relations, or can I take the more like how it's impacting journalism? What would be most helpful?
So Perth Media is a public relations firm. We do because it's such a small community here. We do pub government relations. We do some business development. We do lots of like assisting with events with companies and organizations. But with media relations is our specialty because I was a reporter, a finance reporter in London, Hong Kong, and here. So I have a kind of global perspective, and we would probably do media relations as good as anyone in the country. So media relations and journalism is very, very interesting to me as well.
Fantastic. Great to know.
So
As I'm sure you know, there's a lot happening in the United States right now. So
it's
I'm
yeah,
happy to comment and share some insight on that.
I really appreciate it. So, you're the expert, and can I hand the floor over to you?
Sure. Well, I guess maybe a bit about myself and Red Fox, the company I co-founded. So, again, Nick Myers, and I have been in the artificial intelligence space. Wow, you're really making me think here. Probably since 2016, 2017. So, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but with how much AI has evolved even in the last 8, 9 years. I mean, we've been through it. I can definitely say that. And in fact, what my connection to Australia was and how I met Ming is I connected with you may or may not be familiar. Her name is Murray Ryan. She lives out in Gold Coast. She used to run the Social Media Marketing Institute out in Gold Coast, Sydney. And Murray and I became friends. I, of course, was working in the AI space at the time, more on conversational AI tools. And Murray was like, we really need some help understanding these tools down in Australia. Would love to bring you out to keynote my event. So went to Sydney for a week, keynoted Murray's event. That's where I met Ming, and really the rest is history. But really getting my start more on the firm belief that I believe at some point the technology will be long enough where we will be able to interact with our computers the same way that you and I are talking right now. And and really over the last 2 years, I don't think we're that far off. That might only be a couple years down the road, but that's really been my interest in this from day one. And really my journey from there has been how can we leverage this technology to solve a tangible problem facing people all over the world. I have a direct connection to healthcare. That's the industry that our company is in. I'm a survivor of childhood leukemia. So at the age of 8, I was diagnosed with, a very serious disease. But going through the US healthcare system, which, if you're at all familiar, is not that great, has a lot of deficiencies, specifically when it comes to training people on how to use various therapeutics, medical devices, diagnostics, especially for my parents who had to take care of me at home through a lot of my treatment. I remember often them getting sent some type of device or tool, and all they would have was the instructions that came with it, which is written in scientific language, not for them to understand. So as I went along my journey in AI, I ended up partnering with my best friend of 13 years, who's also the co-founder of our company, Brett, and he's been a software engineer. So we put our heads together and we decided, well, why don't we try and make healthcare more accessible, specifically around medical devices, by building an AI tool that you can talk to that will guide you through that process from start to finish. You can ask it any question under the sun and it will give you the answer. It can train you in real time. It can make sure that you understand it. Thus, of course, just increasing that competency for the patient. But through our life cycle of our company, we are now focusing more on the healthcare professional and clinicians because those are the folks that really are trained more so than anybody else on all the different medical devices that are out there, both in a clinical setting and in a home setting. So that's really what we do. And to say that it has been a roller coaster would be an understatement. We've had a lot of highs, we've had a lot of lows, but we continue to truck along because we believe in our product. We believe in our vision of making healthcare more accessible. And we think that AI is the right technology to do that. So that's kind of my story journey and a bit about RedFox.
Okay, and just quickly before we leave that topic, have you found that there was a lot of pushback because you're actually disrupting the industry itself? And how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we entered at a good time. So we started the company coming out of COVID. So of course you have this 100-year pandemic that's affecting the whole world, specifically the US healthcare system, which of course learning through that process how fragile it was. For the first time, more folks in the industry were open to disruption, were open to other tools that could help one, just increase clinician workflows and solve this workforce issue that has just continued to get worse. At least in the United States, we have a massive shortage of qualified physicians, physicians assistants, and nurses, specifically nurses. So there isn't enough workforce to serve the growing needs of patients, especially as our population gets older. So I believe we entered right at the right time when folks were thinking about how can we innovate and can we use technology. So I think had we tried to do this pre-COVID, we would have faced many more hurdles. But post COVID, more folks have warmed up to the idea of using an AI tool. I think for us, it's just finding the right niche and people who care enough about the process of actually taking a medical device or, excuse me, taking a home lab test or using a home medical device. And that I think has been our biggest challenge. And, in a roundabout way, we've discovered that there might actually be opportunity within our own state. We're talking with the state of Wisconsin, the state that I live in, about a project to train nurses all across the state on how to more effectively take or use a sexual assault kit for victims who come into the hospital. And we're talking with multiple states actually around a similar project. There's a medical device company that has a device that goes on the arm that secures ICU lines so they don't fall out if a bed is moved or something, which is crucial. They found us and they're like, we need to improve our training yesterday. So those are some of the use cases that we've begun to identify. And I think with those use cases, we're seeing definitely people recognizing the need for AI in this capacity. And to date, even with the hype that has happened over the last 2 years, I think a lot of people still don't really understand how they can use it to solve an actual problem. And our mission from day one has been, let's package it up in a way and deliver it where we know it's solving a problem and somebody can use it on a daily basis to do that.
Okay, very good. And I'm fascinated with your company story as well. Have you used public relations, or have what kind of activities are you doing in that space?
Yeah, so it's funny. So my formal background is actually marketing, comm, and public relations. I actually graduated from university with a degree in communication and PR. So this is why this excites me even more, because this is what I did for a number of years. As a company, yes, we have done PR. As a startup, you only have so much budget, so we've had to be very tactful with how we do PR. We partnered with some organizations who have gotten us in front of some statewide publications. We were featured in PR Daily at one point. So we've gotten our name out there. But what's interesting is after ChatGPT came to market, being an AI company, it's like we're an AI company, we're using another AI tool. But the process of getting the message out there and being able to craft press releases and other types of PR communication has only been made more efficient with a tool like ChatGPT and some of the other large language models that are on the market today. And I almost view it as we'd be doing ourselves a disservice as an AI company if we didn't use AI within our daily operations, right?
Yeah, that's great. And so what have you noticed about the media in the States? What's happened in the last year or two in terms of AI?
Oh boy. Well, I think, that I'm trying to figure out how to best unpack that. So, as you know, there is a lot going on in the US right now. I mean, really, let's be real, over the last 10 years, there's been a lot happening in the United States. I think specifically in the area of media and journalism, we've entered a post-truth phase. And what I mean by post-truth is that people have really moved away from trusting journalism, from trusting media communications, specifically when it comes to politics, which we won't get into the politics piece of this, but that is really what I believe started this cascade of post truth. So we're living in a post truth era where, quite frankly, it is very hard to trust and discern any type of media, whether that be from large qualified media outlets and unfortunately all the way down to local journalism. Local journalism being the backbone really of how people consume their information for so long, at least here in the US. I can imagine it's been very similar in Australia. And to see that become eroded has, it's hurt quite a bit and I think affected the type of journalism and media that people consume. So I think, living in this post-truth era, there are good and there's good and bad when you start bringing AI into that picture, right? So, I tend to be more of an AI optimist. How can these tools actually help us in this post-truth era when it comes to PR and journalism? And I think the positive is it can help us discern to an extent what is quality journalism and what is bad journalism. There are more tools that are coming to market, at least in the US, that are trying to identify what is something based on various mathematics and be qualified as credible journalism versus uncredible journalism, which is very hard, right? Because bias exists in all journalism. But what is the most middle of the road, you know, article on a topic, and how vetted is that? So there are AI tools in the US that are coming to market for that. I should know this, but I'd be curious to know, and this gives me more cause to look into it, how many of the larger publications are using large language models and AI to actually write their articles. I mean, maybe it's just because I've been in the space for so long, but I feel you can tell to a degree when something has been written by AI because a lot of hyperbole is used. A lot of things that you or I wouldn't normally put into that article might get inserted. For some reason, the AI thinks it just has to be grandiose and like make a show of itself if it's writing something, right? But I'd be curious to see how many people are using AI to actually write their articles, which from an efficiency standpoint, I can imagine makes a lot of sense. I know we do that. But where I think a lot of the problems come into play is because we have that tool, nefarious actors getting into the mix and using that to write content that isn't accurate, posting that out into the internet, and then people living in this post-truth era believing that without questioning it. And that really is, I think, the biggest problem that we face in the US right now is nefarious actors using AI tools to craft information and articles and news that is not real.
So I've been looking into this and trying to understand some of the impacts. And one of the things that occurred to me, I typed into ChatGPT. I said, does ChatGPT use news articles to draft its content? And it came back with an answer saying it didn't. And then I typed into Google and said, does ChatGPT use news articles to draft its content? And Google said, yes, it does. So, and it also occurs to me that if people, a lot of people at the moment are going, oh, I can't do old-fashioned PR. I need to do everything digital, digital, digital. But it occurs to me that public relations and media relations may be more important than ever in terms of personal relationships because of that trust. And I know many of the business journalists are just being spammed in Australia by AI generated media and press releases, and they're kind of cherry picking reliable sources of information. Would you like to comment on any of the things I've just raised?
No, and in effect, I actually quite agree with you. I think the need for public relations professionals who have those relationships and who can vet their sources is more important now than ever. Having used ChatGPT, often I can say that you're right. In order for it to actually pull valid information, you have to prompt it to do so. If you don't, from what I understand, it just uses all the information that it's been trained on to date, which is all across the internet, right? And I've tried to play with that too, because one of the reasons we have not decided to further use a technology like that in our company is because of being in healthcare. You can't have a system that might generate something that isn't accurate to a patient. Give them the wrong instruction set or give them the wrong step in a process that might cause harm to them or somebody else or screw up a test result. Our system is constrained. We only use information, valid information that we've pulled from the healthcare providers, from trusted sources to train our system. And that's actually very unique. And that's one of the things I like to tell people when they ask us, well, can't ChatGPT do what you do?
Mm.
And I'm like, maybe, but you're going now have to grapple with the fact that the information that you're getting out of it might not be accurate. So all this to say back to your original question and commenting on that, I think especially in journalism, to your point, relationships are crucial because people trust people. And if you have a good relationship, you know that the information you're getting from that relationship and from your expert, that's even more important, the expert is factual and valid. We have seen now that AI systems can't entirely do that, especially ones like ChatGPT, because of the way that they're trained. So I think it's one thing to craft your article or your press release using an AI tool, but you still have to have the human in the loop to verify those sources, verify that information, and ultimately go back to your source. At least that's how I see it.
Okay, that's fascinating. And I'm just got a few more minutes because I don't want to make this first video too long. Because I'm hoping, of course, to get you back on in a few months. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the future of this sector and AI, and or is there any particular tool you've noticed in the States where the PR companies are using a lot of that perhaps they're not using a lot of in Asia and Australia?
Good question. So I think the future in this particular space is, regardless of what happens, by nature of it being an accessible technology that in a way makes our life easier, more PR professionals and more people in media are going to be using these tools. Post-truth piece of that aside, it is a more efficient way to draft content. I think again, the big sticking point here is it's one thing to have it draft that content, but you as the PR professional and the journalists are still going to have to review that, verify the accuracy of the information. If it's a news article, go to your sources and triple check that the information is valid because you're up against all of the AI content that doesn't do that, that unfortunately enters the same sphere that we're all seeing, right? That still at this time is very hard to discern what is that valid content versus that unvalid content. So I think that's what the future holds. And in terms of tools that people are using, I haven't seen, I think, a specific one that is solely focused on PR journalism. I have to say, at least from the friends that I have in media, they are using ChatGPT, they are using Google Gemini, they are using some of the larger language models. But I would not doubt that somewhere, and I'm sure in the US, somebody is working on a journalism specific AI that doesn't grab information from the ether, pull it out, and construct something that may or may not be entirely valid. So that is my comment on that. But you're giving me cause to maybe dive into this a bit more myself because now I'm curious. There have been tools in the past, and Ming actually turned me on to one of these that I used called Jasper.ai. And they were kind of like the LLM before the LLM came out, where you would go to it, you type in a couple prompts, and it would help you draft articles, it would help you draft PR. But then ChatGPT came out of the market for free. I'm not sure what happened to Jasper, but all I know is I'm sure a bit of their market share was eaten because of that. Um, I do know, and I wish I could name it off the top of my head. There are some AI companies out there, one or two at least, that I've seen that are specifically working on detecting bias in journalism
Right.
based on semantic analysis. So the AI will read the article and will give it a score related to where it falls on political bias.
Fascinating.
Um, I would love to get the name of that tool because I know that it's out there.
Okay.
So that is what I have at least seen in this specific industry in the US. It might seem that we are ahead in a lot of ways, but I think at least what I've seen with AI, we too, you know, have a bit more to catch up on. Let's just say that. Would you think it would be there'd be more of an incentive to do so based on our current political environment and living in this post-truth era?
And just finally, before we go, I thank you so much for your time. A lot of people out there, especially some middle-aged people like myself, are feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the wave that is coming. Have you got any advice for them?
Don't feel like you have to bite off more than you can chew. If you're interested in trying out one of these tools, it's as simple as pulling it up on your phone and going to a website. I like to tell people there's, at least in the US, there still is a lot of scare tactics around, oh, AI is going to eliminate this job, it's going to remove this and that. And ultimately, that might happen. But at the same time, as we've seen throughout human history, especially during the Industrial Revolution, as we switched from an agrarian society to an industrial one, new jobs and new opportunities were created because of that, as old ones might not have been more relevant. So, do I think that we're going to see this massive dispersion of socioeconomic status and job opportunity because of AI? No. I think it's going to be the difference between professionals who learn how to use these tools as part of their day to day to make them more efficient versus those that don't.
Mm. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll speak soon.
All right. Thank you, Cate.
Bye.
Bye bye.